And now for poems by Emily Dickinson. Emily was from a prominent Amherst, Massachusetts family. Her father was a lawyer. And after school, Amherst Academy, and a year at the Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, she very notoriously, it's probably the best known thing about her, other than her poetry, she lived as a recluse, almost never leaving the Dickinson family home, the land, the homestead. She saw her siblings, of course, but very, very much liked to keep to herself and to her own family. That little bit of school was all she really needed to see of the outside world. She remained close with her family, particularly her brother, and maintained several friendships via correspondences, via letter, most notably with the Boston writer and critic Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who eventually and posthumously, meaning after she died, published her poems with the help of another of Emily's friends, Mabel Todd Loomis, who, oddly enough, was actually her brother's mistress. Strange arrangement. Only 7 of her poems were published, but anonymously during her lifetime, but now we know there are a total of 1,775, and not all of them reached print until 1955. So no reputation, no real public awareness or notoriety until quite a bit after she died. And her poetry contains eccentric punctuation, especially dashes indicating emphasis and interruption. Why? Because, and this is quite groundbreaking considering the time in which she was writing, and this is the influence of Emily Dickinson poetry, because what she's trying to capture is not how one speaks, but how one thinks. Flying impressions, little fragments of thought. The romantic characteristics of her writing, she was, after all, influenced by the English Romantics, especially John Keats, and the early Victorian poets, like Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And the romantic characteristics that we've already discussed, but that can be applied to her. Sentimental melancholy, again, wistful sadness, kind of a smiling sadness. The importance and the exceptionality of the poet, I think you'll see in some of these poems, it's downright funny how inflated the view of the poet's self-importance is. The failure of knowledge and reason. Fascination with the grotesque, mystical imagery. Unorthodox religious interpretation and beliefs. And a wish to transcend worldly cares and priorities. Certainly, a lot of people, it's easily noticeable that she liked to write a lot about death. Certainly, there are poems of hers that qualify as Gothic. And speaking of which, she certainly falls under the category of American dark romanticism. Dickinson's subject matter is a mixture of death, uncompromising truth, and playful humor. Dark humor, usually. Now, dark romanticism, this is like Nathaniel Hawthorne. These are other American writers. Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Scarlet Letter. Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick. At times, also like William Blake, with a dark inversion of romantic tropes and expectations, which puts her much more closer to Coleridge than Wordsworth. And in dark romanticism, there is the subject matter there's a disturbing falling short of salvation. As opposed to what you typically associate with romanticism, you have some kind of impression or vision, and there's transcendence, there's salvation of some quasi-religious nature. But instead, in dark romanticism, there's uncertainty or even damnation. In dark romanticism, there is a mocking of the false comforts that sweet, picturesque imagery might provide. So it sort of, lifts its nose at sentimentality.